By way of introduction, I am Aaron Cameron. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here at Encore. I am also within Encore the leader of our Copilot and AI go-to-market strategic initiative. So as you can imagine, any organization like ours is very interested in bringing to market for all of our customers solutions in and around Copilot AI. I lead that strategy, and so I've been involved in that for a couple of years now. And so I thought I'd give you a sneak peek at the end into some of the things that we are doing to make that real, both for ourselves and for our customers as well. The agenda is a lofty one for only 30 minutes, so it will be quite high level. So if you've spoken with us before about or seen any demos or sessions about AI with us before, this may be a little bit of repetitive and a little bit too high level for you, but we're always available for a deeper chat after the webinar. All right, so let's get into it. I did group 3 of those items on the agenda into kind of one in order to kind of get through things rather quickly and make sure we have enough time to cover everything off. But when I was thinking about doing this presentation, I was really thinking about how to best kind of communicate, Copilot in general and where to start. And what I thought was the best way to kind of go about it is to get you thinking about how Microsoft thinks about Copilots. And when we think about Copilot, it's not one single thing, although it often operates like a single application. But really what's underneath that is what Microsoft would call more of a brand family of products and features and functions that give you access to AI in various areas within the Microsoft platform. So I've kind of segregated these into three general buckets: the in-product copilots, which typically are named Copilot in, and then the application name. We'll talk about those in a minute. The product extensions, which usually have the for word in it. So D365 Copilot for sales, for service, for finance. And then finally, the named products, which are typically the ones that almost are always ones you have to license and have a direct cost. And that would be Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is the most common one. There's a security Copilot, Copilot Studio, which is more for development and whatnot. And so I thought we'd talk a little bit about these really quickly before we kind of get into a deeper discussion. But the in products, depending on the nature of them, may require some licensing, but typically are licensed through a different application. So for example, Copilot in Excel, Copilot in Teams is typically something that you would get access to with a Microsoft 365 Copilot. Copilot in Business Central, you get along with your Business Central license. Copilot in Sales, you get along with a sales license if you're using Dynamics Business Central or Dynamics Sales. So there's some nuance to whether you need to purchase additional licensing for those ones. For the most part, they come along with stuff that you already bought, or you license them elsewhere, and then you get that functionality. The D365 Copilot for Sales, Service, and Finance typically are additional cost. You would license those as sort of extensions to the core functionality that you get with each of those D365 licenses. And then the final one there, as I mentioned earlier, most of those are going to be paid licenses. There is, on the top layer, Microsoft 365 Copilot. There is also Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat, which is the free version, which does allow you to do some access into the AI world. Microsoft 365 Copilot will do a little bit more that is directed at your internal systems for that individual user. When in doubt, the best thing to do, if you're confused about any of the Copilots and what they do and whether you need them and need to license them, best thing to do is reach out to one of our account execs or account managers who can kind of guide you through the Copilot, and the other is agents. And so if you think about Copilot, even though in the last slide we talked how there's a lot of little different Copilots, it's all the same experience, no matter which way you're accessing Copilot. It's always the same logo, it's always in the same spot in all of your applications. So you kind of think of it as a one-to-one relationship between Copilot and the employee. And while there, yeah, like I said, while there are quite a few Copilots, it's really kind of one way of accessing AI, one window into AI. If you look at the agent side of things, agents are really what will transform business processes. So agents, they come at all levels of complexity. We'll go through a different number of those in a minute. They can be tied together, but really what they're doing is they're taking a specific business process and they are running that specific business process. So you could have one individual that has one Copilot, but that one individual and Copilot is accessing a series of different agents in order to help them with their daily job functions. So think about it as a bit of a one-to-many relationship on that front. So what does the Copilot do? Copilot is largely there to ask questions, give you feedback, give you some inspiration, maybe generate some files for you. At the simplistic layer, it's Q&A. So ask it a question in the chat, get an answer. Go to the next level, it'll also do things like summarize meetings or summarize documents for you. And then you go a little bit more advanced, it can create. So we use it to create PowerPoint slides. We use it to create some of this PowerPoint deck that we're looking at today. We can create images using it. We can have it respond to or prepare responses to emails or generate emails for us. So it's intended to kind of take the bulk of the activity that a user needs to perform away from them and still allow them to put finalizing touches on things like PowerPoint presentations, emails, and whatnot. So there's a series of different levels of what you can do with Copilot at the top layer. When we shift into agents are a little trickier. They really exist on a larger spectrum of simplicity and advanced type functionality. I would say every organization is really at different stages for their AI transformation. Some are building some really advanced next generation agents that have some autonomous capabilities, which means they operate without human interaction, almost like an employee for a subset of functionality in your organization. And these, by the way, these descriptions are not necessarily the technical names that Microsoft uses. They're more our interpretation of what type of functions agents can perform. So at that retrieval level, they're really designed with specific instructions on how to behave and what data they're always going to go and retrieve in a general sense. They're typically initiated by a user or a specific event that occurs in somewhere else in your systems or in your platform, and they're largely just bringing data or information back to the user. The task-related section is connected to specific workflows or processes. So they might take that data that is being used in the retrieval agent and then perform a task. I'll give you some good examples of those and how we use it internally a little bit later. So they operate based on knowledge, skill, and rules that we prescribe to that task agent. And their real primary purpose is to automate repetitive, repeatable tasks. On the autonomous side, those agents really operate independently. They dynamically plan and learn from the process, so they kind of advance without human interaction, and they adapt to changing conditions so that the decisions that ultimately an individual would make, these agents are performing on behalf of that individual. At this point in time, for the most part, we incrementally roll out that type of functionality and like to continue to have that human interaction for quite some time before we allow those agents to go truly autonomous. So they need to learn, and we need to be satisfied with what they've learned and how they're going to interact on our behalf. All right. So one other way of looking at Copilot from a user's perspective is it's really the organizing layer for those individuals to interact with not just agents, but all of the large language models that are out there. It's the interface, so to speak, for AI. I think it's a nice way to think about it. It really has some traction, and we've seen some vision into where Microsoft is going with this in the future, in that Copilot is really not the gateway, but potentially even the user interface for a lot of the business systems that you're working with today. We've seen future demonstrations in and around how it is effectively the interface for ERP and the interface for systems. The vision is ultimately that every employee would have a Copilot that knows them, knows their work, largely frees them from the drudgery of repetitive work to unlock productivity and save time. And one other thing to note on the Copilot Studio front is that Copilot Studio can really guide us and give us a lot of individualized organizational flexibility on where to build and how to point Copilot. It even has the ability to look at other AI engines that are not Microsoft in order to get sort of a balanced response from AI, which is a little bit of a secret, but is a really interesting way of sort of hedging bets when it comes to what AI is producing. So I thought it was interesting tidbit that Copilot does have that kind of capability of accessing multiple non-Microsoft AI platforms. Throughout the entire ecosystem, IT has control and monitoring abilities to manage, secure, measure the impact of the usage of the agents and what they are up to, and as well as what the users are doing in terms of AI. So we can make sure that we've got very restricted use of AI, whether it's on our own data and what data it is using ultimately in the cloud. And those dials are typically monitored and controlled by the internal IT departments for our clients. So when we talk about transforming a business using AI, we typically take that left to right approach that we see on the screen. And so the first box we've kind of covered, it's the general chat-based AI, which probably most organizations are using at some point, or most individuals are using already within their businesses. That next level is what we talked about in terms of supplementing that with agents on top of traditional Copilot functionality. And then that last mile is really opening up AI to deep customization and control. So typically on those fronts, you start with some deep technical coding and development tools like GitHub or Visual Studio, and then you incorporate Azure AI Foundry as well as Fabric, and I think Microsoft Graph plays in at some point into that last layer, which is really a tailored solution to be able to point AI and Copilot to other competitive AI products. That is the layer and the complexity at which you need to do it. It's really in that development arena that you have that ability to do and perform that type of function. All right. There are a number, going back to agents, there are a number of pre-built agents in a variety of different applications that Microsoft has brought to bear in order to kind of give both partners and customers some good representative examples that are generic in nature and that almost any client could start using. I don't need to get into all of the agents, but I'll give you a brief maybe description of the D365 agents, the ones that we work with, specifically within the Business Central framework. We've got two. We demoed them pretty regularly when engaging with customers and prospects. One is the sales order agent, and the other is a payables agent. And so the sales order agent largely is set up, monitors an inbox, and effectively will respond to customers asking for things like attendees. I think it's coming out this month, if it's not already just been released. And largely what that is the ability to have your vendors email a specific inbox and have that inbox take those invoices, read them, process them, create the payables transaction for you in Business Central. And then, of course, a human at that point would review the image and attachment that came in the email, as well as what the agent created as far as that payables invoice to make sure it's valid and correct, and then would perform the various posting. So there's a lot of third-party tools that are out there that do that type of thing. Now it is embedded directly in embedded directly in the Microsoft application. In these cases, I kind of talked about licensing at the very beginning. I want to talk a little bit about how some of these are procured. Largely, the agent comes with the system, but the processing that it does is what you ultimately pay for. So typically, in that case, just to give you an example, you pay with credits, Copilot credits, I think they're called, and typically one of those would use about 60 to 70 credits every invoice that it's processing, which would convert to about 60 cents US dollar, about $1 Canadian to process a single invoice. So just to give you a sense as to what and how some of that stuff's licensed. All right, you're going to shift gears. For the last 10 minutes, we'll go into some Copilot comparison with some other AI tools. And full disclosure, the first draft of this slide, I used Copilot to create it. And then largely what I did is I took that same graph that Copilot created, and I ran it through ChatGPT to get a different sense as to whether the data was correct. Both of them, for the most part, got everything right. There were a couple of spots where I needed to tweak some of the answers because it was a little dated. And I think that's probably some sage advice in how to use Copilot. It's great to generate a first cut. I would always recommend spending a little time validating the information that comes back from Copilot. And so when you're looking at the various Copilots, and I know there's more than the 4 that I've listed up here. IBM and Amazon both have one as well. These are the 4 that we hear about most commonly. And so I thought I would give you a little bit of a graph in comparing those 4. And then I kind of circled, the areas that I think make the most sense for organizations when trying to select one particular AI tool versus another. So that top layer really kind of guides, I think, organizations to pick one or another. So on the Copilot front, if you're not using Microsoft 365, so Office, so Word, Excel, Teams, or Dynamics, SharePoint, it's really going to be limited in the ability that it can deliver to you at the end of the day. Similarly, though, if you are using those applications, you're going to get limited functionality should you go down the Google Gemini route, and vice versa. So largely the Copilots and AI tools are aligned to the underlying technology that you're using for day-to-day productivity and for ERP. And then shifting down a layer into cost, they're all $20 to $30 per user per month. Microsoft is at the $30 mark. However, small businesses depending on number of seats, goes down to about 20, I think it's $23 per user per month. So they're all priced in and around the same. That really probably wouldn't be where you would make the decision on which one to go with. And then, you can take a look at your leisure in and around the strengths and weaknesses of each AI tool there. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about how Encore, what approaches Encore uses, and what we've built as well for ourselves that we're taking to market, just to give you a sense as to how we can kind of help businesses. But we've created what we call a Copilot and AI ideation pilot program. And largely what this does, it's kind of modeled on our own journey in developing AI for ourselves. We started with, what do we want to build for customers, and struggled, quite a bit on trying to come up with ideas for what exactly customers would want. And then we shifted that to, well, let's use ourselves as the guinea pig for coming up with some ideas. And once we did that, it really kind of shifted our thinking. We were still stuck though, and so we really had to break it down into really small chunks, and then start doing something super simple and super easy. And when we did, it really took off after that. But the best thing that I could communicate to you guys to start with is just start taking inventory. What systems do you have in play today that you can draw data from, both internally and externally? What are some of the key processes, typically interdepartmental processes, that you get hindered upon? What departmental, individual, organizational level challenges do you have? Sometimes it's easy to start at a purely individual level and then fan out from there if you're having trouble coming up with ideas for where you could use AI. And so we take stock of all of that through a series of interviews, and then we kind of shift into untether yourself from the restrictions that you might want. Unrestricted creativity, we like to call it. And so we ask some questions like that to come up with some direction around what we could do. And then we pick just one small idea, and then we'll typically pilot that for a client. And then after that, once piloted, they typically will start using it, and almost always will ask for, well, what about this? Could we add this to it? Could we add that to it? Could we add this? And that's where it really kind of fans out from there. So the trick is really finding that one small thing that you can then expand upon. For us, and I think I've only got a couple minutes left, we took, sorry, big complex slide, we're a sales organization, so we sell Dynamics products to our customers, and we do so through Teams meetings, emails, chats with clients, or internally. We use a system called Gong that records our conversations with our customers with their permission. We get docs from our RFPs. And what we wanted to do, we knew there was a ton of data sitting there in the conversations that we had with customers in Gong, or could be Teams. And so we pulled that one piece of data in, and we started analyzing what we could get out of it. And as we started asking questions, we came up with more and more ideas as to what it could do. The original thing that we wanted it for was to create an impact statement. So not rely on the salesperson's memory to understand what was most important to the client, but have AI pull out what was most important to the client, and then create a statement that we could rally around when doing our demonstrations back to the customer. But then we started thinking we could do all these other things. We could have, I lead a sales team. I'm forever hindered by my team needing to update their pipeline, but we could take that function away from them. So we're having it starting to update our close dates for our opportunities, update what stage it's at, based on the meetings that we're having with clients. We're often missing who those contacts are in our CRM. It adds those. That one we've built. It adds them and looks to LinkedIn to pull down the right title. It'll update our win percentage for us now. we use it not just to create those impact statements, but also to create infographics that we can then embed in our presentations. And then just recently, it now creates our forecast. So it looks at our pipeline and says, here's how I think your sales are going to go for the next couple of months. So we've built this framework, and a lot of organizations kind of operate in similar capacities to us, and we're working at getting that offering up into the Microsoft App Store so that others can hinge it up to the various solutions that they've got in their organization.